You are the reason parents lie awake at night. You are the monster among us in society. You walk away here a predator, a pedophile, and a disgrace to the medical profession.
Those were the words of a Michigan judge to Dr. Zvi Levran, a once trusted youth hockey doctor now convicted of sexually abusing boys and young men. I'm going to break down how a respected physician used his position to hide as a predator in plain sight and how he was finally stopped. We bring on Tom Smith in studio to talk more about it. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime and Jesse Weber. This all began when a 19-year-old came forward to the Farmington Hills Police Department with a very disturbing allegation, and it's one that's centered around Dr. Zvi Levran, a former board-certified urologist specializing in the urinary tract and genitalia. Yes, that is according to his own website, in case you didn't believe me what a urologist is, but that's the point. If you haven't guessed where this is going yet, well, this young man described a horrifying encounter during what was supposed to be a medical exam, one that allegedly took place in Dr. Levran's home. And there, he claimed the doctor sexually assaulted him. The date was October 18, 2022. Now, Levran, a 68-year-old well-known urologist with a home office in Farmington Hills and working out of a preparatory school in the West Bloomfield area of Michigan, was no ordinary physician. No, for 2 decades, he was known as the hockey doc, providing medical care to youth hockey teams in Michigan and Minnesota. Parents trusted him. Kids looked up to him. But it was that trust that was shattered when police arrested Levran in October 2022 and charged him with 4 counts of third-degree criminal sexual conduct and 3 counts of fourth-degree criminal sexual conduct. He ended up pleading not guilty to those charges, was released on bond with strict conditions: no contact with the minors, hockey players, staff, no more treating patients in his home. Now, that didn't last very long. We'll talk about it. But before we go any further into this, I want to bring on a special guest with me here in studio. We're joined by retired NYPD detective and co-host of the Gold Shield Show, Tom Smith. Tom, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Good to see you again, Jess.
So somebody comes in with an allegation of sexual abuse, sexual assault against a very well-known figure. What do police departments do?
You take your time. You know, you just methodically go through his story. You get a sense of his emotions, and you need to be technically sound on this because you have to match up what he's telling you with maybe what evidence you can collect. If you have a victim saying it happened 25 times and then you further the investigation and he's only been there 4 times, that has to, match up. So the gathering of the pinpoint precision you need to get the evidence against this person has to be correct.
The first thing I thought about was Larry Nassar, right?
Absolutely.
First thing I think about, and I think about this idea of the allegations where somebody uses their profession to commit the abuse. That's very common, right?
Oh, it is. And that's the most evil part of it, because you're preying on people who are going to come to you. You're not going out looking for victims as other predators do. They're coming to you. And then you're, manipulating what you do to create victims. And the trust there of not only the kids, but the parents and the community, you're using that as well.
Can we talk about that? Because coaches, doctors, certain adults, you place trust in these people to take care of your children, to take care of yourself, right? What do you say about red flags? What do parents tell their children about red flags? What do they tell about themselves? You expect to go in to be treated. How do you know if something's on the up and up or you're not going to be abused? I mean, it's a scary situation. What are the red flags to maybe look out for?
That's the tough part, Jess, because no one talks about it. Because the kids are embarrassed, so they're not going to tell their parents, so their parents aren't going to be able to tell anybody else. That is the most difficult part about this. And with this case, you finally have one brave person, like the Larry Nassar case.
Yeah.
You have that one person that just steps up and then it snowballs. And that's what you're hoping for, because all of these, whenever you hear these stories, and we've talked about it before, there's never one victim. It's always just getting that first one out so the rest can come forward.
Hey, so I know you all might be true crime fans, but are you also in a business? If so, let me tell you about our sponsor, Odoo. Odoo is an incredible all-in-one business management software that provides you with a range of applications like their sales tool. The Kanban pipeline, game changer. Whether you're working with leads or full-blown opportunities, you can visually track every stage of your sales process. You just drag and drop to move deals forward. It's fast and honestly, kind of satisfying. When it's time to send a quote, it's literally a couple of clicks. And the reporting, super clear. You get a live view of your pipeline, conversions, what's working, so you can focus on closing and not guessing. Right now, you get a free 15-day trial of Odoo's all-in-one business solution and see how it can make your life a little bit easier. Check it out at odoo.com/sidebarcrm. Was it first a red flag that he was treating people in his home? Is that unusual?
It depends on his setup of his practice. There are doctors, there are PT, persons who have, offices in their house. So it depends on what his practice is like.
So now I have to get into a little bit more details, unfortunately, about what this all is about and how it all unfolded. So, as we mentioned earlier, that after his initial arrest, Levran was out on bond. That arrangement didn't last very long. Why? Take a look.
The Farmington Hills Police Department has received 33 additional tips from the public reporting similar, suspicious, or potentially criminal acts.
So just weeks later, Levran ended up right back in custody because tips began pouring in that led to even more charges, 10 more to be exact. Those tips, according to police, poured in from California, Georgia, North Carolina, Minnesota, Arizona, even Canada. Investigators soon uncovered this pattern within the allegations. Levran was allegedly sexually assaulting mostly young men and boys, even some as young as 14, during these medical exams. In November 2022, Levran was arrested again, this time on a $1 million bond. Additional charges, including 1 count of second-degree criminal sexual conduct, 1 count of third-degree criminal sexual conduct, and 8 counts of fourth-degree criminal sexual conduct. And the allegations were all eerily similar. Unnecessary nudity, inappropriate touching, even showering with players after workouts. One victim, a 30-year-old man, said Levran assaulted him in December of 2020. Another, a 14-year-old, accused the doctor of abuse dating back even further to January of 2018. So you're seeing from quite a time span. Now, in April of 2023, multiple witnesses testified to a pattern of behavior that included physical touching, naked yoga sessions, and even massages.
He told me that he hosts private yoga sessions for small groups of people at his home. Only caveat being that it's naked yoga. Just kind of became progressively more like groin oriented with that massage phase.
Another victim who saw Levran as an adult for a medical issue said the doctor watched him urinate, and then, I'm sorry to say this, and I don't mean to get graphic, but he accused him of inserting an ungloved finger into his behind without consent.
It was taking me a while to try to pee because I'd gone to the bathroom before I went there. So I was just kind of standing there not peeing. And that's when he was like, he goes, I'll hold the cup. And he held my pee. I was like, you just focus on peeing and I'll make sure everything goes in the cup and you don't have to worry about it.
Now, defense attorney Jonathan Jones argued that merely touching a patient's genitals in a medical setting, that doesn't constitute a crime. This was according to the Detroit News. But prosecutors allege that Levran's actions went far beyond just legitimate treatment. The Farmington District Court judge who was overseeing this also disagreed with Jones' assessment, saying, your argument suggests then that the doctors and yoga teachers get a free pass, that I just have to accept that they didn't do it for a sexual purpose. Well, in July of 2023, Judge Brady ruled that there was enough evidence for Levran to stand trial, sending the charges to circuit court. And in his ruling, he said all of these incidents had one purpose, quote, to satisfy the sexual desire of the defendant. In August of 2023, during another hearing, a judge read a statement from one victim, a woman, who said that she had a procedure done that resulted in non-consensual touching.
She said that she felt completely violated. Afterwards, she indicated that she called her parents after she left the office. She called the experience creepy. She said she was crying in her car.
Okay, so Tom, after his release on bond, you see this flood of tips. Is that typically how it works?
100%. And like I said before, it takes that one person to make everyone feel at ease that they're not the only ones.
How do you manage all that, all those tips?
You have a lot of detectives and investigators on board, and each of them are fielding maybe from certain areas, from certain area codes, from certain parts of the country, to just funnel it into a working group of coordinating all the information that you're getting.
And to corroborate it, right? Because look at the Sean Combs case, very different, right? But as soon as he's hit with a lawsuit, as soon as he's hit with charges, a lot of people will come forward with allegations. Now, on one hand, it can be, well, he's finally being brought to justice, I feel safe to come forward. These allegations are true. Right. The other way of saying is, maybe the allegations aren't true and people are just jumping on the bandwagon. law enforcement's job, right, is to verify these tips. How do you do that?
Well, you do it just through interviews with the victims, and then you're matching up other victim statements, which are the same, which are similar, which fit the time frames of these abuses going on. Are the stories similar? So if you have one person on one side of the country, like you just rattled off a bunch of different states, and they're the same pattern and the same information that went into these abuses, that matches up. Time frames of schedules and meetings and exams, all those have to be coordinated as well and corroborated into, like I said, just a kind of flow chart of information that's going to prove that this happened.
Is it important to establish consistency? Is it important to establish a pattern? Because look, you had, not an outlier, but one woman, right, came forward, different than the other men and young boys. So how important is it to establish that kind of pattern or consistency?
It's important for the prosecution and going forward with the case because it just makes it stronger. And, when you present a pattern to a jury or in a courtroom, that's very impactful because people understand that. People understand just the constant and continuous abuse on a certain level, a certain way, much better than just random acts of abuse.
And here's the thing, though. One of the difficulties can be how do prosecutors argue in court that this wasn't a legitimate medical procedure, but it was abuse. Now, with Larry Nassar, you could say what his position was, he had no business going anywhere near the areas he went near. Urologist, maybe a little bit difficult. I don't know. I mean, how do you separate that? That could be challenging, I imagine.
It could be challenging, but it's going to be the witnesses. It's going to be sitting on that stand and putting your hand on a Bible and telling the truth and the emotions that are going to come out of that testimony. You can't make that up. You can't make up the stories that are the same and the flow of victims that are going to be testifying and their emotions coming out on that stand.
And by the way, what happened with the legal case? So after all of this, after facing mounting evidence, he made a decision to take a plea. Now, it wasn't a guilty plea. It was called a no contest plea, where you don't actually admit to a crime. You don't deny it really either. You accept a conviction without admitting guilt. You're basically saying, yeah, I know I'm going to be convicted. I'm accepting the conviction, but I'm not saying necessarily I did these things I'm being accused of. So on March 28th, Levran stood in Oakland County Circuit Court and pleaded no contest to 28 charges, including 10 counts of third-degree criminal sexual conduct, punishable by up to 15 years each, 3 counts of second-degree criminal sexual conduct, 11 counts of fourth-degree criminal sexual conduct, 2 counts of child sexually abusive material and commercial activity. Prosecutor Karen McDonald issued a statement praising the victims for their courage, saying this would spare them from having to relive their trauma at a trial, meaning they didn't have to testify. This guilty plea holds Zvi Levran accountable for his crimes and provides justice for his victims. Today's outcome ensures Levran's victims will not be re-traumatized by the burden of testifying at trial. It also spares them any further uncertainty about the outcome of this case. The victims were heard and their stories were believed. Zvi Levran is guilty. You surprised he took this plea?
No, and that's a great job by the prosecutors and the detectives, because when you build a case up and then you have all of this evidence that you then tell or show the defense attorney going, we got you. This is it. You're going to have this, 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 and this in front of you talking to a jury. That's what helps out, taking a plea.
Does it feel like not a sense of accountability because he didn't own up to it? At the end of the day, from a practical point of view, and I'll tell you his sentence in a minute, he's going to be behind bars, right? But is there something lacking from a no contest plea like that?
It is. It's one of those things in the criminal justice system that they kind of get away with it, not verbally telling everyone what happened and admitting what happened. But the end result is him going to jail. And I think that is what the victims wanted, their parents wanted. And in the end, that's what they're going to get. I
cover these cases all the time, and I always ask, is a plea deal in the works? Is a plea deal in the works? Why? Because to have victims testify is incredibly difficult. Harvey Weinstein trial is happening right now here in New York. I sat through the first trial. I was there as these women were testifying about what happened to them. I have to imagine it's traumatic to revisit those incidents. For them to be spared that, not have to go to trial, there is a value in that, right?
Oh, absolutely. You never want to, it's a kind of, I don't want to say last resort, but you hope that you have so much evidence against someone that they do take a plea to spare a victim from going through that, because not only just telling your story, Jesse, as you know, getting cross-examined, and
Yeah,
that's
of
worse.
course.
So anything that can spare them from going through that is always a plus.
By the way, how do you have those conversations, those initial conversations with victims or alleged victims? You're trying to elicit information from them, but this is an incredibly sensitive area, and you're not cross-examining them. Sure, you want to know if they're being credible or not, but also that's maybe one of their first times actually recounting the story to an authority figure. What is that? What are those conversations like?
Very slow and methodical, and you have to just take your time, and you're at the will of the victim. If they want to take a break, they want to talk in one particular area of a house, outside or whatever, you accommodate them, because you have to make them comfortable in order to get what you need to proceed forward with the case. So you are all about taking care of the victim, where they're comfortable, what they want to talk about, and it doesn't matter how long it takes.
Yeah, it can take hours, right?
Sure, absolutely. It can take days.
Yeah. They can say, I just have to stop today. I'll come back, tell you a little bit more.
Absolutely.
It's understandable. Now, what happens? So on April 29th, at his sentencing, one woman, now 29 years old, told the judge how the abuse still haunted her. Levran, in his speech, claimed remorse but stopped short of fully admitting guilt, saying, "The most important thing is remorse. I want to express that remorse to all the victims, and I can't say how sorry I am to all the victims. At night, I pray to God because he is the only one who knows." However, presiding judge Yasmin Poles wasn't really swayed. No, she called Levran a predator, a pedophile, and a monster among us.
You are the reason parents lie awake at night. You are the monster among us in society. You're the person that everybody should have feared, but didn't know it, and it was right in front of their face. You walk away here a predator, a pedophile, and a disgrace to the medical profession.
And she detailed how Levran used his status as a trusted physician and hockey doctor to groom young athletes and gain the trust of their families.
Don't worry about a thing. I'm going to take care of your child. Come visit me at my house in my basement. They're in good hands. And every single time you got away with it, you became emboldened to continuously commit the crimes against these children and young men. You had them exactly where you wanted them to be, and you took advantage of it.
And Judge Poles went on to describe his conduct as calculated, manipulative, and deeply disturbing.
I find your behaviors and what I've read in this report to be sociopathic in nature. That you can hide behind this medical degree, that you can engage with these hockey associations, and everyone in the world thought so highly of you. You're physician such and such, you're associated with these hockey leagues, and everyone believed you. And you were playing the perfect part. And even as you see in here now, I'm not a mean person. I didn't mean to do anything wrong to these people. Have you read the statement in the pre-sentence report?
So what did she sentence him to? 10 to 25 years in prison, which actually exceeded the sentencing guidelines in the state of Michigan. Think about that for a minute. Now, he would be eligible for parole after 10 years. Not sure he'd actually get it, but if he does, he's going to remain on Michigan's sex offender registry for life. His medical license is suspended indefinitely. Tom, a lot to break down here first. Let's first start with his statement. What'd you make of it?
You can't go by any statement he's going to make. It's not heartfelt. It's not remorseful. It's a statement because he got told to make a statement. That's all. He's never going to admit it. He's never going to show any remorse for it. And it's all about him. Has nothing to do with the victims, has nothing to do with anything else but himself.
The 10 to 25 years in prison is significant. And you don't know if he's actually going to get parole after 10 years. He could serve 25 years in prison. What do you anticipate?
With the amount of victims there are and the detail of his abuse, I could very easily see that going, to the max. And I give the judge a lot of credit for exceeding the recommendations of the sentencing that she did because of how horrific it was.
Does law enforcement usually provide letters to the parole board in, either in support or in saying that they shouldn't be granted parole?
They can. That usually goes through the DA's office, and the DA's will take care of that. I know many detectives or myself sometimes have been, there to support the victims, when these processes start. But it's not so much a letter to the judge, but being there for them.
I don't like asking this question, but I am curious. Somebody who pled no contest to these charges, how do they typically do in prison? Because these are very specific kinds of charges that he pled no contest to.
It might not go well for him. In prison, there is a kind of unwritten rule and a code that even the worst criminals have of you don't touch kids, you don't deal with kids. That is a very strong thing that goes on in prison and very real. So could he end up in protective custody? Yes, he could.
It is significant if he does get parole being on the sex offender registry, right? Mm-hmm. How does that work typically?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be confined to where he can go, what he can do, jobs he can hold, where he can live, all things like that. It's going to, this is a haunt for him forever, which it should be.
Yeah, I thought it was significant that she exceeded the sentencing guidelines here and had strong words for him. Do we typically see judges do something like that?
Ones that are into their job and take, you're allowed to take cases, not so much personal, but have a feeling towards them for the victims. That's okay to do. And that's what she did, calling him a monster and a predator. And that's exactly what he is. And I loved what she said. If she could have, she would have given him 3 life sentences.
Yeah.
If it was up to her. And that just shows the passion she has for victims.
When you look at this case and you look at something like we talked before about Larry Nassar, right, the former Michigan State USA Gymnastics team doctor, is there a problem going on or are these isolated incidents?
I think they're more isolated than just the norm for sure. But you have to take steps today of maybe not going with what everyone else is doing. Parents maybe need to be a little bit more involved of who their kids are going to see and doctors they're going to see, and not so much, well, everyone goes to them. And take account of maybe being there, when things are taking place, exams are going on, and do background checks of these doctors of what they're doing. Because in the end, they could be a team doctor, they're still a stranger. You still have no idea what they're doing in their lives other than the 1 hour that they're with your child, if that is a PT session.
And adults too. It's tough. It's such a disturbing case. Tom Smith, great seeing you. Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure, Jesse.
And I hope everybody can check out the Gold Shields show. Real quick, what do you talk about on the show?
All true crime, true stories of detectives, military members, victims who went through these cases and how they did it and what were the outcomes of them.
Awesome. Doing some great work there. Hope everybody can check it out. And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.